So thank you so much, Matt, for joining us here today. We're really looking forward to hearing about Debtor Daddy. So I've known about this solution almost since the beginning of talking about the cloud ecosystem. So you must have really seen a number of things over that time. But let's focus today on Debtor Daddy, the next evolution of debtor management. Debtor Daddy is software to automate your overdue invoice follow-up process, from friendly reminders to phone calls and debt collection. So if I can hand over to you, and I think you have screen sharing capabilities there, and we've still got some more people coming in, so I'll let them in while you take over, Matt.
Sure thing. All right, how's that looking? Is that coming through okay?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So yes, stoked to be showing you what we've come up with. We've been cooking a few things in our kitchen over the last few years, and really cool to show you what we're launching specifically for accountants and bookkeepers. But today I'll step you through, I guess, some of the things that we've learned about debtor management and making it easy and taking that pain away. So for those of you who've seen us way back in the day, you may have tried us out. A lot has changed, as you would hope, within a decade. So today I want to step you through how you can create an end-to-end credit control solution. So it goes beyond the automated reminders. You can add in things like SMS reminders, you can schedule phone calls, and you can also follow a very structured process to go through a stop work or stop credit, if that's relevant for your client, and then follow a best practice approach, taking people all the way through into debt collection. Because what we've learned is when you do a great job of the early stuff, moving things into debt collection is not an emotional or difficult decision. It's you've done your darndest, you've done best practice, you've over communicated, and now's the time to take that step. But we'll get to that a bit later on. Now, another key thing as a bookkeeper or accountant, I'll also show you how you can create a best practice process for each of your clients, large or small, and then bring them into a central place where you can manage them and see what's going on and really provide a great level of service. So what I really want to show you is, and we're working with a number of bookkeepers and accountants at the moment who are now creating their own debtor management service using our platform. But let me step back a bit. So why are we still talking about debtor management? Part of me thinks that with all the technology that we have in the world today and payment options and go cardless, Stripe, why are we still chasing people for payment? But it's still very much a thing. People are offering credit to their customers. It's really a part of customer service. You can win a whole lot more deals when you offer credit. It's something that's a given in business today. But the thing that just sticks around, if you talk about debtor management in a room of business owners or bookkeepers or accountants, there's that collective groan. Everybody hates doing it. So we've really sort of dived into this to go, well, why is it so hard? Why does it suck still? And what can we do about it? So let's look at the current process. And this will be familiar to some of you. You're running automated reminders in, say, Xero, MYOB, QuickBooks, and you'll run that sequence. Now, often these are sending one reminder per invoice. So when you've got customers that you're invoicing several times a month, that's going to result in a lot of emails, a lot of amounts that they're due to pay. It clutters their inbox and it creates confusion. So, and we also learned firsthand is that they become much less effective over time because you're just wearing away at the customer with too many emails. And then I think the worst thing about this is what happens next. There's no kind of process. And so what we see happening, and this should be familiar to you, is with bookkeepers, or it also happens with office managers working in finance teams. You log in, say, once a month to your aged receivables. You pick your targets. Maybe you export this to a spreadsheet or you print it out. We know people that are still print it out and they probably use a red pen to go through the list and strike them out as they get through. They write some notes in the spreadsheet or update them into Xero. then maybe send some manual email reminders. Some of you will be using templates, which helps. You might send manual SMS reminders, pick up the phone a few times, set some callback dates in your calendar, and then you've got queries with your clients. So, what if, you've uncovered a dispute or a query on the phone for your client? How do you resolve that whole query resolution process? It's very hard for your client to go into Xero, look at the notes and figure out what am I supposed to do? So how do you keep people accountable and make it all transparent? We just know that at the end of the day, after the auto reminders are done, there's still too much depends on you for this process. It depends on a person. And we see this time and time again. It's really stressful, and it's no wonder that people don't like doing it and they put it off. So this is really what we aimed to solve. But I guess, sorry, I've probably talked to this one already. Yeah, here's another point actually I should touch on, is when you've got one person running this process, certainly in a bookkeeping firm or accounting firm, and we've heard this, is that it's quite hard to hand over that client to another bookkeeper or another person in the team, because all of the knowledge and the processes might be in that team member's head. And as you can see, it's also quite hard to scale that across a whole lot of clients because it's a very manual process. And from the client's point of view, it's a little bit hard for them to get visibility about what's actually going on. And then let's say you wanted to help more clients with their debtors. And we see this a lot with bookkeepers we talk to, is that they already work kind of at their maximum number of hours in the day or beyond that, working to midnight. Yet there's clients who could actually use some more help, which is a really interesting opportunity. And I'll show you shortly a couple of the bookkeepers that we've been working with, is that by having a more structured process and more automation, they've been able to help more clients and actually generate additional revenue as a result of that. So stepping back just a little bit, so how we reached this conclusion. As I said, we started way back in 2012 with automated reminders, and that has a result. I don't want to bag auto reminders, like they should be something you're doing. But what we could see amongst our own customers is that there was still a whole lot that was still outstanding. And so back in 2017, we asked them, what would it look like if we picked up the phone on their behalf? And so that started our journey to building this platform that you'll see today, that makes it very efficient for you to actually make calls on behalf of your clients. So this is Donna. So Donna started with us back in March, actually. And when we first spoke to her about debtors, she flat out said, no, I don't have a problem. We're okay. We're using spreadsheets. We're using Xero and SMS reminders. It was fine. But one of her friends actually started to have a look at the platform and started using it. And once she saw the potential, she actually jumped on board. And I love this story because she did her certification back in March. She onboarded her first client. And then out of the blue, just a few weeks back, really, a prospective client picks up the phone or emailed her, and they had a debtor management problem. So she was able to use our platform, plus our quoting tools and our quoting templates, so all the way to the end. She pitched them this contract for debtor management and won it within a week. So this is what we're trying to achieve with our software and our partner program. Haley, another bookkeeper, she sums it up really well. She's just said it was hard to have confidence in her previous debtor management service because it was very manual and it wasn't really a product. So now she's rolling this out across her client base in different forms. Small and large clients can look a bit different, but it's really starting to work for her. So when you're thinking about your clients, it's ideal for professional services. People like your IT services, digitals, creatives. It works really well for accountants and bookkeepers if you've got that challenge yourself. Tradies, we focus more on the plumbers and the electricians, not so much your builders. They don't, with their one-off larger projects. Generally, it's people with quite a number of clients, say 30 plus, 50 plus clients that they're invoicing regularly. Manufacturing's good, like your coffee roasters and people like that. This was one of our clients actually last year. They brought us on just before COVID hit, and this was incredible that we were able to see consistent results in their cash flow and reduce their overdues during what was actually a really tough time. And you can see the benefit for your client in terms of when they're not distracted and worried about cash, they can really zero in and focus on really the core of their business around what their strategy is and growth. And a question we get sometimes is actually, what happens with those clients that they really only have 1 or 2 debtors a month? And maybe they email you and say, can you call these guys for me? This platform works for any client. So even if it's just a couple of clients or calls a month, put them in the one system and you've got one place to follow that standard process for every client, no matter how big or small. And we've designed our partner program so it works like that. So it's actually, you can still make money off those really tiny clients, not just the really big ones. What apps do we work with? Obviously Xero. We probably play best with Xero, to be fair. Probably a reflection on how much they've invested into their API in terms of what we can do. At its core, that top line there, we're pulling invoices and contacts. Actually, we're pulling reports as well out of Xero, QuickBooks, and MYOB. Xero is the only accounting app that we push data back into. That will progress over time, but the expected payment dates, which are critical for cash flow forecasting. If you're using Float app, then they rely on the expected payment date. That's important for that. And also the notes. So remember how you're adding notes manually into Xero? Now, when you're adding your notes inside Debtor Daddy, those will flow through to Xero. So it creates great visibility. And then lastly, we plugged into Zapier. So you can do all kinds of magic with that to keep the rest of the business in the loop of what's happening. Right now, I think we're going to jump into a demo and even field any questions that come through at this point. Okay, so just sing out if I need to zoom in a bit. Actually, I'll chuck it in a wee bit more. So what you're seeing here is what your client would see. It's also what you would see when you log into each client. So your dashboard will show you the age receivables. That should be quite familiar to you. The debtor days trend, obviously you want to see that heading down in the right direction. And then also your overdue ratio, which is just the amount of overdue versus the total outstanding. So it's a good sort of health metric. Generally, you want to see that if it's more than 30%, that's generally the consensus where it's not where it should be, but it really depends on the industry. Down the right is a good way to get an update about what's been happening. So the reminders that have been sent, maybe replies that have come in from the reminders, so you know that the system is working. But when we first take on a client or we start looking at a particular scenario, we step into the workflows. So this is really the key to the time savings and having a standard operating procedure for every client. So we recommend these 3 types of workflows in general, certainly for, say, something like a professional service. And when you step into each workflow, you'll see you've got a sequence of reminders down the left, and you can create your own mix of email reminders, phone reminders, and SMS reminders. So that can be tailored down to the number of days that you want to send those activities out. And then once you've finished this particular workflow, then we might actually add a step and then move it into the stop credit part of the process. And that's where you can also notify people in the business to say, hey, this account has now reached this particular age and should be considered for stop credit. So you're not just doing the first part of the process, you're taking it through a best practice process. You're giving it teeth and real consequences for the client. But all these steps are optional as well in terms of you can automate it or you can have a manual approval. Because you don't always want to put somebody on stop credit. It's a commercial decision about whether you want to take the relationship to that, to that stage. So it's very configurable. Now, something that happens quite often is people go, well, I've got two types of clients. Say I've got, I was talking to a plumber that just this morning actually, and they've got large rental companies that they're working with, then also just residential customers. So they've got these two types of groups. One is on 20th of the following month. The other group is 7-day terms, because you want to, certainly when you're dealing with residential customers, you might want to SMS more often and run a much tighter ship. So what we do here is we probably take a copy of this and maybe we would tailor that for the residential people, and you might say it's for 7-day terms. Save that. And here we might just change the process and make it a lot quicker. You might add a bit more SMS, get onto the phone a lot sooner. And then what we do is that you go through your contacts and then you can move those into the appropriate workflow, depending on the approach that you want to take with them. So you can see it really gives you a high level of control over how you're going to tackle debtors, rather than this great big wall of aged receivables that you chip away through. Here you can be segmented, you can have a high touch process for the biggest customers. Maybe it's phone calls only, because you don't want to lose a customer just because you sent out some poorly timed, badly worded reminders. You can be very sensitive to the customer's needs and relationship. Something else that's really helpful is the filters, and you can create as many of these as you want. You can even filter based on the line items in Xero and the invoices. You can filter on contact groups. There's a lot of data that comes through. Here I'm showing you everybody that's the current workflow is stop credit. So you can see who's at that stage of the process, or you can see who's currently in the pre-debt collection process. So if you're running, say, a monthly meeting with your client to review how are things going, you can step through these filters and go, it's all under control. We've got this much, in this stage of the process, this much here. We need to make decisions about this older stuff, about whether we're going to take it to debt collection. So that's been super powerful for people. And I think it's probably one of those things that we've learned over the years, is that debtor management is really more like customer service. It's a proactive outreach across email, phone, SMS, whatever's appropriate, so that you can get to the bottom of what's going on. And you take a customer service approach, it makes the calls a whole lot less stressful as well, because you're just trying to help, right? And that's a much easier call than saying, where's the money? We should have had it yesterday. So that's my overview. I'm not going to dive too deep. We can do some, you're welcome to book a demo via our website to take a deep dive one-on-one. We're happy to do that, but happy to take some questions now if that's cool.
Thank you so much, Matt, for the demonstration and all of the information about Debtor Daddy. So everyone's welcome. If you would like to turn your screen on, your video on, and ask your question, or pop it in the chat area and I'll ask it. Nicole, did you still want to ask that question? Go for it, Nicole.
That was a great demonstration. And from that, where you copied the workflow, can you set the default in that particular example? Could you have everyone automatically land on, say, the residential one, because you'll probably add those people quite frequently, and then just manually move the commercial ones to the trade terms rather than have to select everyone into residential in the first place?
Yeah, good question. So what we'd do for the moment is that we would find out which represents the bulk of the customers. So we would probably make residential the default workflow. So every new person would come into that. Some of our customers create kind of like a blank workflow, which is like undecided yet. And so everyone pulls into that workflow, then they move them into the appropriate one. But I'll let you in on a secret. These filters here are going to become what we call enrollment rules. So you can create very dynamic rules that will then funnel people into the appropriate workflow. So you don't even have to, do that manual assignment. But you can't tell anybody yet because that's not yet ready yet.
Secret safe with me. And in Xero, if you've grouped your customers into the smart lists, will the smart lists come across as well?
I think so far we only work with the contact groups, but that's a good idea. I can see if that's available. I don't see why not.
Perhaps I meant what you just said anyway.
Yeah, right, true, maybe.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. Ron, did you have a question there?
Thank you very much, Heather. I'll put my hand down now. Matt, look, I've been around a long time, and debtors for some organisations is a nightmare. I've just recently spent 3 months with an organisation trying to sort them out. And the problem is that, like so many other organisations, not all, a lot, they actually create their invoices in another system. And then in theory, it's supposed to be transferred across to Xero. Now, unfortunately, Xero wasn't up to date. It wasn't even close. The system where they're creating their invoices really was more of I wouldn't even call it a CRM. It was more of a student ledger program. So it didn't have any way. The best you could do is just get a aged debtors list out of it. You couldn't do anything else with it. And the problem I had was trying to find which invoices hadn't been brought across, get them across to Xero, so I could even begin the process of trying to analyse it. And then the second problem is, is it true, at least my rule of thumb has been, once it gets over 90 days to 120 days, you may as well just write it off?
So is there two questions there? Like, how do you handle the gnarliness of old, out-of-date data, and then the 90-day one? Yeah? Gotcha, okay. Let's start with the easy one, the 90 days. What we find is people just give up too soon. When you follow a structured process like the one that we've shown on screen, it's very clear, usually by 60 days, whether you should write it off or not, or send it to debt collection. So the 90 days, I don't think it's helpful unless it's a commercial decision. So I'd say just don't give up until you've done your darndest and even at least send them along to debt collection so that they don't harm other businesses. That's one reason. If you won't do it for yourself, do it for other businesses. In terms of the data, we see that quite a bit. Sometimes, we've got a team of receivables specialists that make the calls on behalf of a lot of businesses. And in that case, we get them to invite us into their legacy system so that we can do some checks and balances. And it does make it a bit more manual, but with this software plus access, the right level of access, and you can do kind of a manually, sorry, let me jump to the schedule. So what Debtor Daddy works well if it's fully automated, that's your most time savings. But if for whatever reason you can only reconcile payments once a week or once a month, you could still be hyper efficient with this because you just tick the ones that you want to send and it will follow the next step in the workflow every time. So you can still be very structured. Hopefully that helps. I don't know if I can solve the data wrangling for you.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Ron, for your question. I've had another question which is a little bit similar to Ron's question. Can Debtor Daddy connect to a third-party management system such as Connectwise to set the client on credit hold based on the rules within Debtor Daddy? So you have the ability to put that credit hold on. Does that go back into another system, and in fact, does it go back into Xero or QBO or MYOB?
Yeah, gotcha. So how we would handle that, we don't handle it, say, natively, as we don't have an existing connection with Connectwise, but what we would do here is with Zapier, when we added this step here, so after we've finished our standard process and we know that as a business we want to move them to stop credit at this particular timing, that particular move to workflow event is picked up by Zapier. So that becomes your trigger in Zapier. Then if you've got Connectwise in Zapier, you could then create a task or add a note to the approach or the related contact. So that contact name here, that's how you could achieve that within Connectwise. But it depends on their API and their Zapier options.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. What about if we go to Xero or QuickBooks or MYOB, which you do have a connection for? If I activate the credit hold, does it activate it within those solutions as well?
No, not at this point.
Yeah.
Happy to explore that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Nicole, would you like to jump on and ask your question?
Hello again. My question is, where are your call center staff based? I guess really what my question is, what kind of accent is going to be on the other end of the phone when they're calling up?
Yeah, good. Very common question. That accent is going to be very Kiwi because they're based in Christchurch, New Zealand. When we hire for our receivables specialists, we look for people with customer service experience, like if they've worked in hospitality or call centers, but we don't hire debt collection people because we see ourselves as customer service. So Christchurch based, actually we've got some in the North Island too, but it's New Zealand. I don't see us doing it any other way. I mean, maybe if we're serving, I don't know, overseas customers and we hire people in, offshore, so it works. But for now, New Zealand is home for our team.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that, Matt. So I'm wondering if Martha's clients in New York are going to understand those Kiwi accents.
Yeah, well, we call for a few US and Canadian clients, and it seems to work to our advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you provide clients, the bookkeepers, the accountants, and I guess that then their businesses, guidance on how to have their upfront engagement to ensure that they have an agreement in place for collection?
So do you mean to run that service on their behalf? Or?
No. I mean, I'm about to do some work for Joe, but I need Joe to know my collection terms before I start doing that work. Do you provide people with guidance on that?
We do when we're running an audit of their entire receivables process. So we have a template where we can do that. And that's one of those key questions. Often it's already in the terms of business, although sometimes we ask people to pull it out of there or copy it out of there, put it on the invoice or on the quote, and just a few bullet points, and it just sends those early signals that you take that part of the business professionally, and it's important. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that was what I was asking. Like, are you giving them guidance up front to make sure that they understand how you are going to collect it, etc. Thank you.
Sorry, with our collection partner, so we work with Slater Byrne, who are actually Australian based. They assume that they'll add the fees on top. So it's kind of just forgiven, and so you'll get paid whatever you're due, regardless.
Absolutely.
So that,
Thank you very much, Matt. Does anyone else have any more questions? Does anyone have any more questions? Either pop them in the chat area or ask them online. Okay, it doesn't look like I've had a few direct messages, but no specific questions. Matt, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Sure. Let me just jump back to these slides. I think I had a couple of slides, so I'll just run through that.
Yes,
to close.
absolutely.
So in terms of next steps, I mean, you remember Donna's story. That was a couple of months. She was really flying with what we're doing. So we recommend run through our certification process. You can do that online. Pick your first client, like probably an easy one that you can get a quick win. We can also take your really gnarly ones that really need help. We'll step you through and we'll handhold you through that. So you get some runs on the board, get a case study that you can share with your other clients. We'll help you promote it. We've got templates for, even creating the quotes, it's very, very detailed. But in terms of the next steps, you can head along to the landing page there, debtordaddy.com/LNL21. From there, you can apply to be a partner. It's just a formality, really just a form. Let us know that you want us to get in touch. We can run you a demo if you like. We can show you everything else that's included in terms of all the templates. But our goal, when I say heaps of support, we've had to go to the nth degree because we learned the hard way that if you set up automation and you try and manage debtors and you do it a bit wrong, you can kind of create a bit of a train wreck with your client because you're talking to their customers. So we're stepping you through best practice to make it simple and I guess to make it a great experience for you and your clients. So you feel like you're really confident with offering this kind of service.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Matt. If there are no more questions, there doesn't look like there are. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the community? And you've given them the contact details, so you've just given that website there. So is there anything else you'd like to share with the community before we?
There was something I hadn't touched on, which is what we call the call console. And if you go to our website, there's a page dedicated to this. So this is probably one of the more time-saving aspects of the app. So all of the notes and things that you typically added in Xero or in a spreadsheet, you add through here and then we push that data elsewhere. But you've got the complete history of everything that's happened with that client. You can resend invoices in a couple of clicks. You can snooze your calls to later on. So you're often, if you don't get through, you can snooze it. You don't have to set a reminder in your calendar. You can move to the next step in the workflow. You can set your expected payment date. So remember, we built this for our own team. So we were, we wanted to make our team as efficient and productive as possible. It's the way that we retain our clients that we call for. We've got to show awesome transparency and great results. So we had to build this to make it work. And then I think what's awesome, sorry, I should just show you last piece, I promise. Remember the queries type process when, you can't, let's say that this particular invoice is disputed. So you could say, customer wants a credit, put a require response in there, add a note. Maybe we dispute that particular invoice as well. Put a reason in there. And then when we go to, once we've finished our calling session for the client, view report. So when it comes to keeping your client up to date, all the work that you've done in Call Console is automatically saved into a report that you can then send to your clients. So they've got great visibility of the work that you've done. They can clearly see any queries that require their attention before you can move on. And this was probably key to when we asked our clients way back, can we call on their behalf? They wanted to know what we were saying and what the outcomes were. So it had to be super transparent. Otherwise, they wouldn't trust us. Now some of them trust us so much that don't even look at the call report and we're like, can you please answer the queries? But in general, it's just created a great feedback loop for customers, and they can see that it really works. But yeah, that's my I'd say that's our killer feature for now to end on.
Excellent. Oh, well, thank you very much for sharing that with us, Matt. And thank you very much to you and the Debtor Daddy team for joining us today. We've really appreciated hearing all about Debtor Daddy.
No,
thank you.
Great.